Hey everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beaton, joined by the Fantasy Master Lothario, the Spectacled Man of Mystery. Gray, all right. How's it going over there, Gray?
Hey, what's going on, man? I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking. That was a very sincere. I'm good. I actually Cougs is out of town for a day and a half. So yeah, I'm real. I'm real good. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Living the single life, which means having to take care of the dog and eating pizza.
Yeah, and not cooking anything. Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds
eating
fun.
pizza. Yeah, I'm eating pizza. I'm living the single life, eating pizza and taking care of the dog. So yeah, life's good, man. Thank you so much for asking. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. It'd be the Midwest thing. Now we've reversed roles. It used to be you would ask me, and I'd actually explain it, and then you'd get angry at me. Now I ask you, and you actually explain it, and you're just a full Midwesterner. Between Cougs and I, you're just becoming more and more of a Hoosier. Slowly, Gray.
I
Just
am.
happening between all your interactions.
I'm actually right now. I'm gonna mute my microphone and throw my chair across the wall. Hold on. Hold on. I got to throw something as a Hoosier might. Actually, I saw recently. I must have missed it, but Bobby Knight died.
You did.
Yeah, and I saw recently he had a quote, something about it was something really terrible, and I was like, wow, if he was alive, he'd get canceled for that quote. And Cougs, who I thought was a real Hoosier, who I thought was really an Indiana native, was like, wait, Bobby Knight's died? Bobby Knight's dead? I was like, oh man, you ain't no Hoosier. You're a poser. That's what you are. Anyway, that was a shout out to Cougs. Okay,
Yeah.
moving on.
Too much time on the West Coast. A little more time back in the heartland.
It's crazy.
I'm not there anymore either, so I can't really say anything. We're here to cover the catcher rankings. I will say, if you want the rankings before they are posted on Razzball, if you have drafts coming up soon, or if you just want to beat everybody the information, Patreon, the Razzball Patreon, you can go out there. I don't know what it is anymore in regards to cost. Gray, what's the cost now?
I don't know what it is. It is $10. $10, and you can have all my rankings ahead of time, and also my projections, and as well during the season you get the buy sell early. You get it like 3 days early. It depends on how much I'm moving. It depends on my motivation, but it's usually about 3 days early on the buy sell. So for $10, you get the buy sell 3 days early. Anyway, $10, which is basically the cost of a cup of coffee if you're in if you're in Los Angeles, I guess.
A fast food meal anymore. It's what?
Yeah,
Anything is $10.
You know what Biden did to the Patreon inflation? Come on, man.
And you know what, Gray? You haven't even raised the price, so how can anybody even complain?
I know. Like Biden tried to raise my Patreon price. I was like, not here, man. Not here. No inflation here, bro.
Anyway. Now, if you are looking for something other than the Patreon, I have a couple of league announcements. One, I am trying to get the podcast league together. Maybe the Catcher podcast isn't the greatest announcement place for it, but hey, that's what we're going to start with. It is a custom head-to-head categories league. I make up the categories myself, however I feel like. There will be some random ones. Just know that going in. There is no buy-in. It is a win beat-ons money league, and if you happen to win it, we also get you a spot in the Raz Slam or the Raz Bowl, whichever you choose. And then if you don't want to be in that weird, funky league, there's always the RCLs, which I'm sure the announcement will be coming out sooner rather than later for those. So just keep your eye out for those. I usually run one of the paid ones. So if you want to play an RCL with me, it's like $5-10 usually.
And that is also your money, correct?
The RCLs are not my money. I am
what? Oh
I'm
my
not
God!
funding all
You're making other
RCLs.
people put $5 up. Jeez. Well,
Yeah.
for $10, you can have all my stuff, or just free on the site if you wait like a week.
If you wait
if you
72 hours,
if you wait like 3
a
days,
week.
but no, honestly, you want to support me. I mean, don't you? I mean, don't you kind of? Aren't you like, yeah? I have 2 kids at home, but I kind of want to support Gray. Yeah, you know. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I mean, you
Thank
can
you.
always just donate money to me or Gray. We're
Thank you.
happy to take it. I'll go set up a GoFundMe page or whatever it is, and you can just send me money, and that's fine too. But let's move on to catcher ranking since that's probably not going to happen today.
If you want actually, when you support me on Patreon, in the note area, you can write child support if that helps. if that makes it feel better. So if when you get audited at the end of the year, you can be like, yeah, this was my child support, my 2025 rankings.
All right, before we get anybody in legal trouble, Gray, let's move on. Let's start the catcher rankings here. Year one. The back-to-back number 1 catcher in the player rankings, William Contreras. Last year, he had 23 home runs, 9 stolen bases, 99, 92, 281, 365, and 466. You have him projected for 20 home runs, 7 stolen bases, 86, 74, and a 286 average. He made some really big changes prior to 2023. He's maintained that through last year and got even a little bit better. He was 15th in average exit velocity, 22nd in hard hit, and everything pretty much was in line or got better across the board. William Contreras is pretty good at the catcher position.
Yeah, he is. That's true. So it's actually like going. So I think before we talk about William Contreras, and we will, you're welcome. But before we do, I think it's good time to say that I wouldn't draft William Contreras or any of these top catchers. I'm not a top catcher guy. I don't believe in position scarcity. I think it's all bunk. I think like if you look at William Contreras's numbers, let's take away me. Let's take away me and go to Steamer. So Steamer's projections have him at a 87 runs, 25 homers, 86 RBIs, 7 steals, 276 batting average. So that essentially is I'm going to say around Nick Castellanos. That sounds like about Nick Castellanos, who is on average going roughly 100 spots after William Contreras. I think I want to say, I don't have it open in front of me, but it's around there. I think Castellanos is going around, say, 120-ish, 110 maybe. And Contreras is going roughly around like 25-30 overall. So, between 90 and 100 spots overall between the two. And they're essentially the same lines. Because catching is so precarious on the body, kneeling 155 days a year isn't going to be good for your knees. You can ask your mother. No, I'm joking. But he's definitely been durable in the past, 2 years. And I'm not necessarily calling for him to not be as durable because he does get a decent amount of starts at DH. That could be precarious too, to be counting on DH starts. You also have Yelich there, And there's a chance, Yelich has, he's got an iffy back, and he's got, his injuries are starting to build up. So, Yelich needs time at DH. Contreras isn't going to be able to DH, so it's like, one hand washes the other. Like Contreras, like it'd be nice to say Contreras is going to get starts elsewhere besides behind the plate. But you have to assume that's the only place he's going to be starting. Maybe he gets some DH starts, but you can't just, a wing and a prayer here that he's definitely going to get them. Hopefully he does. And I think I have him down for like, maybe 50 at bats at DH. But he's definitely like, he's been durable. So I don't want to like say necessarily he's absolutely not going to be durable. Like he could be, but it's a lot to play, to be a catcher for that many starts every year. It's a lot. It's just a ton of work. It's just a ton of, stress on his body. So any little thing could knock him out for a week or two. And a week or two isn't a lot to, have a guy like get an IL, like maybe a 10-day IL, misses, say, 15 games, goes day to day for a couple days here and there. Like only if he misses 15 games, that immediately is going to knock off runs and RBIs, and so much of his value is going to come on runs and RBIs. So the fact that you're hoping, like by drafting him, you're hoping you're going to get counting stats, runs and RBIs, and you're going to get a solid average, which you probably will get I have him down for a 286 average. So I am expecting a solid average. But if you take away, 20 games or 15 games, that solid average is over, less at bats than, someone like, say, I don't know, Luis Reyes or something, or anyone who gets a good average. So the fact that like William Contreras is like, I have him down for 20 homers, 7 steals, 285, which is kind of like, I mean, I know you and I both hate this guy. You have hated him for much longer than I have, but like 20 homers, 7 steals, 280 season is kind of like Bo Bichette. Like that's not dramatically different. And Bo Bichette is going, roughly 150 spots after William Contreras. So this is like his entire draft price is all predicated on position scarcity. And, the reason why I think position scarcity, when, whoever came up with it originally, they came up with it when like, Mike Piazza was catching and hitting, 40 plus homers and 360. So it was like a different game then when like Mike Piazza was doing that. And there was guys who were like totally different type players with position scarcity. Now in today's game, William Contreras is like basically the same as, just sticking with catchers even, he's basically the same as like Tyler Stevenson minus 30 points on average and maybe 10 to 15 runs and RBIs and kind of the same amount of power and, say 5 steals. So that sounded like a lot where I was like, oh, 15 RBIs, 10 runs. But I mean, in reality, you can get that off of waivers. That's not like a ton of stats. You're getting the difference between William Contreras and say Tyler Stevenson. So there's not that big of a difference between the top catcher and the middle catchers for me to be like, yeah, that's worth the price of position scarcity and worth the price of like 150 spots difference in draft price. So yeah, I'm out on Contreras. I think he's fine for what he is. I don't see the huge upside. I think he's overpriced because of position scarcity.
Yeah, position scarcity, I'm not going to say it's not a thing. It has its place. For me, it's more of a, kind of a decision maker if you're down between two guys and one guy has a position that maybe just dropping off soon. It's really about like the tiers that the players are sitting on and other than that, it's about the numbers. And like you said, Contreras is very much built on getting those counting numbers, which isn't my favorite thing to bank on, even for really good players with guaranteed playing time. And we're talking about catchers, that's almost never the case. There's, if he all of a sudden has some, minor knee or back issues and they give him those days off instead of giving him at bats at DH so he doesn't have to run the bases and deal with all that, that changes what's going on around him. As you mentioned, like the line's not that dissimilar from other catchers. If Adley doesn't have his terrible second half, they're probably about the same. Adley might have even finished higher than him. I'm not sure. But like for Alec Burleson numbers to pay, I saw he's going like back into the second, early third, and early in FBC, which is 2 catcher, but still, like that's crazy to me, Gray.
Yeah, no, completely. And also, like, yes, that is a 2 catcher, the ADP I am quoting, but that sort of that drives the price for a lot of like other leagues that are not 2 catcher. So, the fact that William Contreras is going at 23 overall, he may go at like 50 overall in single catcher leagues, but still that's way too high. It's still nowhere near where he should be going. Like he is he's fine for what he is, but like like I said, he's roughly around a 75, 65 to maybe 75 to 80 overall. I think neutrally would probably be where I would go, where I would put him. And he's not like a guy, like I wouldn't be looking at a catcher in that position. Like I would, if I was drafting a a hitter for a 20 homer, 7 steal, 285 season, William Contreras wouldn't be the hitter I'd be drafting for it. Like if anything, I'm not like a draft catcher high guy, but like a Sal Perez who could just hit like, 30 homers and 250, that's a lot more interesting as a catcher for me, even though I'm not like, I wouldn't be drafting him either unless he were to fall. But, we'll get to a little bit more interesting catchers later on. If you're listening to this podcast now, you don't want to put it on 2 times speed, but instead put it on 25 times speed. just breeze through all these catchers who we would not draft.
That's very fair, Gray. We're not really taking these guys. There's some leagues you and I play in that are 1 catcher where catchers won't go drafted. And then maybe in one of those, we're just like, fine. The value's there now. Like William Contreras is at 200. I guess I'll take him. But no, most people are not going to see that. He's going to be gone well before that, even in a 1 catcher league. Yeah, what'll happen is he'll go. The next guy we're going to talk about will go. Right. And then there'll be a huge gap of like 120 picks. And you'll feel like an idiot for taking a catcher.
Yeah, like I remember, right? No, I agree. I remember last year in our RCL league. So that's a 12-team mixed league. In our league, I don't draft a catcher until after 200 overall, and in that league, I drafted Sal Perez, and I was totally happy with drafting Sal Perez at like 200, 210 overall. But, in most leagues, you're not going to be able to do that. And if, people remember correctly, I believe Sal Perez was going around like 150 overall. So it wasn't like a huge discount, but it was big enough where I was like, yeah, I'll draft Sal Perez at 200. So, I got him and I was happy with him. Sure. But also I would have been happy with, just picking up a catcher off of waivers and dealing with that in a 12 and especially in a 12-team mixed league. There's so many catchers on waivers that it's just like ridiculous to be drafting a catcher. Like you can Franken a catcher, meaning like Frankenstein. Like you can piecemeal a catcher together. Probably your Franken catcher can probably get close to like top 5 catcher numbers So, like, why would you bother drafting one?
Yeah, when their numbers feel right in regards to the numbers of other people around them, sure, go ahead, draft them. Otherwise, let other people waste their draft picks on these guys
And that's
early.
also
And like
not.
I said, this
Oh, I was just going to say that as a 12-team mixed league, I was saying absolutely don't draft a catcher there. Just pick one up off of waivers unless someone, falls like we were saying. But like in a 15-team mixed league, in NFBC league, I remember picking up Connor Wong off of waivers, and he was fine. I mean, he was good. And I was more than happy with him. Like, and that's a 2-catcher league, and he was available. And then I think that was my main event league, where either I drafted him in the last round or I picked him off of waivers. Either way, though, I mean, it's basically free. So Connor Wong, you're getting that price, and I believe I also had Tyler Stevenson in that league, and he's going in like the top 10 catchers this year, and last year like he was a last round pick. So it's like and that's in a 15-team mixed league too. So we're talking about like around like 450 overall ish. Like that's really deep, and I'm still able to get him like either in the last round or off a waiver. So yeah, catchers are available, man. They're just available.
they are fickle. They change year to year. Most of them, the stats are inconsistent because it's a very difficult and demanding position, and they don't get to spend the time in the batting cages that the other guys do. They're dealing with more injuries. They're dealing with that, so much more. Let's move on though. Next guy, and this is again the other guy said that people might pay up for just because he is younger. He is exciting. Last year, Yanier Diaz had 16 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 70, 84. He hit 299, 325, 441. You have him projected for 22 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 76, 88, and a 291 average. He was 38th in hard hit, 79th in average exit velocity. He had a 17% K rate, just under a 4% walk rate, not a whole lot of walks. Launch angle was down some, didn't really build on the power from 23, but we kind of know it's there because we've seen it as well. What are your thoughts on Yanier Diaz?
Yeah, I mean, he was actually, so I'm not a draft catcher high guy, but he's one guy who I would like to draft him. He's like a catcher I would like to draft. I won't draft him because he's going too high as a catcher. So I'm probably not going to draft him. Like my cutoff.
Feels like a guy you might get in an auction, Gray.
Yeah,
you'll decide in an auction you're going to get him.
Right, maybe in an auction league, but my cutoffs are usually like in a 1-catcher league, I'm not drafting a catcher before 200 overall, and in a 2-catcher league, I usually draft a catcher around like 150 overall, and then my second catcher is just a guy who has a job, so like Jacob Stallings type or something. So I like a total punt on the second catcher. But my first catcher is usually around 150 overall. So maybe I could see if Yanier Diaz was like he's going before that in a 2-catcher league, but maybe in a 1-catcher if he really fell far enough, maybe. But it's probably a pipe dream. I'm probably not going to get him. But with all that said, I really like him. I think he's probably going to be more valuable than William Contreras. And if I had if I had any balls, I would have ranked him ahead of William Contreras because I really do think Yanier Diaz has a better path to DH at bat. So look at like Yordan Alvarez should be DHing, but they put him in the outfield, and their outfield is a bit of a mess unless the Astros sign someone between now. We're recording this end of January-ish. So unless the Astros sign someone else, their outfield is a bit of a mess for bats, at least. So if Yordan Alvarez goes to the outfield and Yanier Diaz, they want to keep Yanier Diaz's bat in the lineup, I could see him DHing. on days off from behind the plate. So I could see actually Yanier Diaz having a better path to at bats than even William Contreras. And Yanier Diaz, I think, has actual upside. Like, I think Yanier Diaz would be, he could potentially, I see 25 plus homers, good average. Like last year, he had 299. And he's only, I mean, that's only his first real full year. He's a 291 hitter in 258 games. Like he's a legit hitter. So I really like Yanier Diaz. Not going to get him more than likely in most leagues, but if you were the type to draft a catcher high, I would be more interested in Yanier Diaz than William Contreras, to be honest. But I mean, I'm not getting either of them, but I kind of like Yanier Diaz.
Yeah, I mean, all Diaz really has to do is kind of get the launch angle back up. It fell below 10, which is not really a great place to be for anybody that you like some home runs from. I'm not saying it's impossible or that nobody's ever done it, because we've seen guys put up power numbers with a low launch angle, but that seems to be the big difference from what he was doing in 23 versus what he did in 24. Maybe there's a nice middle ground there where he puts up, like you said, 25 across the full season. He should be hitting probably not cleanup, but 5 or 6 regularly for the Astros. So he's going to get plenty of at bats as well. So yeah, I don't mind that. It's really hard to go back to back at number one, much less three-peat at a single position. So I mean, smart money would say you're right. You probably should rank somebody other than William Contreras there, but when you go back to back, you kind of earn some respect too. So I don't mind it at all, Gray. Moving on to number 3, Salvador Perez. Last year he had 27 home runs, 58, 104. He had 271, 330, 456. You have him down for 25 home runs, 56 runs, 91 RBI, 266 average. 45th in barrels, 51st in average exit velocity, 71st in hard hit. Dropped his K rates a few points, walk rate up. He had the best ISO, WOBA, WRC plus, whatever stats you like. He got better. It was the best year in the last 3 years for him. Swung less, made more, better contact, and in his mid 30s here as he enters his age 35 season. I like Sal Perez. I don't understand why he dropped last year in drafts, and I've seen him dropped in a few drafts this year.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know exactly why he dropped last year. He's pretty, reliable for what he does. He doesn't do anything, I don't think, really outrageous. I think probably 27 to 32 homer type year would be nice. Like you said, I project him for 25 homers, 25 to 32 ish, 25 to 30 at this point in his career, which isn't bad. I mean, it's fine. Like I said earlier, when we were talking about William Contreras, if Sal Perez was priced appropriately in drafts, I would be fine drafting him. I don't mind Sal Perez at all. I think he's pretty reliable for what he does. I do find it absolutely hilarious how many runs he gets each year. I mean, he really is he's so slow. I don't know if he's really the guy that should be hitting third or even fourth. I mean, maybe move him down to the 5th spot. I mean, he's got last year he had 27 homers and 58 runs, hitting 271 in 158 games. 590 at bats. That's it's so hard to do that. It's so hard for him to only have 58 runs in with 27 homers, 58 runs, and 590 at bats. That's crazy. That's so crazy, man. That is a lot of at bats in the middle of an order to only have 58 runs. I also think it's a sign that we might have drifted too far from the light for the people who are saying Sal Perez is a future Hall of Famer. Yeah, I don't know about that, man. I don't know if he's gonna make it to the Hall of Fame. I don't think he should, but who knows? Yeah, I mean, people know Sal Perez at this point. There's not much else to talk about. He is a giant man. He's a giant guy who gets less than 60 runs on 25-ish homers.
Yep, that sounds pretty accurate there, Greg. Don't really have much more to add. Like you said, we kind of know what he is. Moving on, next tier here, Cal Raleigh. Last year he had 34 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 73, 100. He hit 220, 312, 436. Young projected for 30 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 71, 87, and a 234 average. 11.1 walk rate was the best of his career. A guy that should lead catchers in home runs, but is a batting average drag, at least this high among catchers. Once we get later, his batting average doesn't look so bad.
Yeah, no, totally. Also, like, I don't know if it was an anomaly last year or if this is a pattern that is emerging, but catchers got a ton of at bats last year. Like there was a lot of guys getting a lot of catchers getting a lot of at bats. Like Cal Raleigh getting 546 at bats last year. I didn't mention it with Sal Perez, but he had the 5th most at bats for a catcher with 590 since 2001. 5th most since 2000. Excuse me, from 2000. So 5th most at bats since 2000. He had a ton. Everyone. William Contreras had a ton of at-bats. William Contreras, I believe, was 6th on that list. Cal Raleigh, like I mentioned, 546. A lot of at-bats. I mean, that's a good thing if you're a guy who or a girl who drafts catchers early. I mean, that's a promising thing. That's a promising new thing. I don't know if that's really like something you can count on going forward. It's sort of like, that does make some of their stats from last year, may not be as repeatable as we think because, they did get so many at bats. Like Cal Raleigh, he had 100 RBIs last year. If he has his, if we go back to like the years of him getting like, he had 370 at bats one year and then 513. So even if he gets like 505 at bats, roughly around the qualifier for an everyday player, that shaves probably 12 to 15 RBIs at least off of his numbers. And then you throw in the fact that the lineup is a little bit iffy in Seattle, and the park's hard, and it just, all these little things just like shave counting stats off of a guy's line. So, it makes them less appealing. But with that said, I mean, if Cal Raleigh is going to lose at bats, then maybe Sal Perez loses at bats, maybe Yanier Diaz loses at bats. It's all kind of like, it doesn't necessarily, like, if one guy loses at bats, it doesn't mean everyone is going to, but they could as well. So, it's like in a vacuum, this is how they're ranked, as they are. But I shaved like 15 at bats off of Cal Raleigh from last year, roughly. What did I shave? No, 19. Excuse me. I shaved 19 at bats off of him from last year. So I have him down for 527 at bats, and I'm way higher than Steamer for the Steamer projections that are on the site. Have every catcher for not everyone, but like 95% of the catchers. Rudy has the projections for them, our Steamer projections, that is, which are done by Rudy. Well, the projections are done by Steamer, but Rudy does the at bats. Anyway, the projections for the catchers on our Steamer projections are a lot lower. Like everyone is roughly 10% higher at bat wise than for me than it is for Steamer. I don't know. You take that for what it's worth. I don't know whether that's here or there, but I'm just saying if catchers are getting less at bats this coming year, they're going to be less valuable. And another reason not to draft them. So, there's that. But yeah, Cal Raleigh is fine for power and, whatever counting stats come with that power.
Yeah, and I do wonder if it has something to do with the pitch clock. Maybe it is there's more timing involved. You can't have a pitcher and catcher not on the same page. Maybe it has to do with the number of injuries that the teams are facing and kind of these guys are some of the better hitters on the team, so we might as well just let them play once you find you run into some injuries. But we will see what happens as we continue down the line and see if the catchers get the playing time again. Number 5, Adley Rush.
What's interesting, I wrote this up in the catcher, in my catcher rankings, you'll see all this. I wrote all this up, but what was interesting was there was 40 catcher seasons with 135 games or more caught. And then that was from 2000 to 2010. And since 2013, throwing out 2020 because it was a weird year, there's only been 10. So from 2000 to 2010, 10 years, there was 40 catcher seasons of 135 games played. And since 2013, which is also 10 years, if you throw out 2020, there was only 10. So there is like 1/4 of the games caught over 135 games caught by catchers. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it seems like catchers are catching less games now, according to that stat. So, I mean, it might have been an anomaly with just a few of these guys this year. Anyway, I don't know. Whatever that's worth.
All right. Moving on. Number 5, Adley Rutschman, 19 home runs, 1 stolen base, 68, 79, 250, 318, and 391 last year. In 2025, you were projected for 21 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 71, 82, and a 254 average. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, he really struggled in the second half, hitting 207 with 3 home runs. The K rate and the walk rate did both improve. BABIP was awful at 229. Launch angle went up. Infield fly balls got a little out of control. This was the guy that got drafted early last year at catcher. What are your thoughts on Adley Rush?
Yeah, he was the first catcher off the board last year in most leagues. I believe his ADP was roughly around, I think, 40, 50. Not as high as William Contreras is this year, but not that much lower, and higher than William Contreras. That was at least in 2 catcher leagues. So Adley Rutschman, Matt Wieters. Oh, excuse me. I had a someone compared him. Actually, someone in the comments on Razzball compared him to Matt Wieters. I forget who it was now, but that is harsh. It's a harsh comp. I don't want to say Adley Rutschman is Matt Wieters yet. I won't say it yet, but yeah, I mean, he's kind of like, I feel like he is the absolute best. He's the best example I can think of for why I wouldn't draft a catcher high. Like he is, there's all this hype around him, and at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, I mean, he's a 20 homer, 4 steals, 275 hitter if everything breaks right. Like, okay. I mean, okay. It's so boring. It's such a it's like when you can draft with fantasy in at least 5x5 leagues, if you can get a guy who's going 2020 and hitting 230 like Spencer Steer last year, if you can get a guy like that, that's so much more valuable than a guy who is going to go hit 20 homers, hit 270, and hit, and get 3 steals. And it's just like 2020 just rule. I mean, getting power and speed is just like that's the name of the game, at least in 5x5 leagues. Adelaide Rushman it does nothing for me. I kind of wish he had a better season last year, at least a little bit better, because then people would be drafting him even higher again this year. But I think some of the shine is worn off a little bit. People are still drafting him too high for my taste, but some of the shine definitely has worn off. He's going, oh my God, he's going at 60 overall on ADP. Oh, it's so terrible. That's like, just take your draft pick and just throw it out the window on the way to the draft. Just like, rather than be like, you know what? I keep my 4th round pick. Just keep it. I was going to draft Adelaide Rushman, but instead you keep it. It's such a bad pick, man. At 60 overall, you can do so much better than Adelaide Rushman. But yeah, you do what you want. Anyway, moving along.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I would say I have more hope for his upside than you do, it sounds like. But his upside is still like Ezekiel Tovar or Taylor Ward, like with average. Like it's just not worth like paying up for this upside that people think is there. I mean, congratulations if you get the number 1 catcher and it's 25 home runs and 265. Moving on, number 6, Wilson Contreras. Last year had 15 home runs, 4 stolen bases, 48-36, and hit 262, 380, 468. You have projected for 20 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 68, 71, 251. 26.8% K rate was the second worst of his career, but the 12% walk rate or 12.5% walk rate was his career best. Swinging strike rate was the worst of his career at 16.4. Barrel, hard hit, exit velocity all look kind of in line with what he's done previously. There is some excitement about Contreras because he is playing first base instead of catching. Does that excite you, Gray? Are you all excited?
If you want to get a fantasy baseball player horned up, you don't forget Sidney Sweeney. You just tell them that a guy with catcher eligibility is going to be playing any other position, and boy, that gets fantasy baseballers horned up, man. That is just like, that is catnip. That's a little Spanish fly right before you go into a draft. You know what I'm saying? They love it. Oh, God. Oh, a guy with catcher eligibility playing first base? Don't mind if I do. I don't have any interest whatsoever in Wilson Contreras. I think it's so, again, it's like position scarcity for me. It's just so overhyped. When you say, oh, he's got catcher eligibility, he's playing somewhere else. Like, who cares? I don't care. That's so dumb. I mean, it's really like, it doesn't make him better. It does, like, it gives him like an extra, maybe 15 runs and RBIs. Maybe it's like, okay, I don't care. It does nothing for me. And that also, like, you have to assume, like, probably first base is going to be a lot. By the way, the Cardinals moving him to first base when they don't really have a catcher, but they have guys who could play first base is just brilliant. It's brilliant for them to clog up first base with Wilson Contreras. But anyway, that's neither here nor there for our purposes. But Wilson Contreras playing first base, like it probably, knock on wood, it doesn't happen. And, I hope it does lead to him getting a lot more at bats, but it doesn't mean necessarily that is what's going to happen at all. Like that, just because he's playing first base, it's like he could easily, a throw from Mason Wynn goes into the baseline, he reaches out and goodbye elbow, like, because he has no idea how to play first base. Like there's definitely like possibilities for Wilson Contreras to not make it through the season just because he's at first base. It doesn't help him run from the batter's box to first base without pulling a hamstring. Like, it's like, just because he's at first base doesn't make him healthy. It doesn't keep him on the field. That's A. B, it's like him playing first base, learning a new position. Like, yeah, I mean, it's an easier position in theory, but still, like, that might be in his mind when he's at bat. So he's like, that gets into his head. So then he's not hitting as well. Or even if everything goes well, it doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to go from like, you can't just prorate his stats up and say like, oh, he hit 15 homers last year, but that was only in 301 at bats. So if he gets 500 at bats, he's going to hit 35 homers. Yeah. Like that, it doesn't work like that. Like, so I don't know. I'm out on Wilson Contreras unless he falls to after pick 200. Then I'm like, yeah, sure, I don't care. I'll draft him if he falls to after 200 overall, but in reality, he's not going to fall that far, and I'm not drafting him.
Yeah, we have to also make sure that this move to first base actually works out, because
exactly,
played a lot of it.
Totally, you get to like the second week of April, and Oli Marmol is like, you know what?
I think I
like Alec Burleson better. Or yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, he's Mr. Bungled, like 6 easy ground balls and 2 picks in the dirt, and it's like before you know it, it's like, Wilson Contreras gonna be back behind the plate.
Yeah, that's that'll be a fun thing for them to try and figure out where he belongs on the field. This is one of those where I'm glad the Cubs didn't bite this bullet, because yeah, he's not a catcher anymore, and I'm not sure he's a first baseman. So this will be a fun experiment. But yeah, sure, he should get more at bats, barring health and everything. The swing and strike, the K rate, not good looks as he enters his mid 30s. It's not promising. I would much rather take the next guy we're going to talk about, actually, which is Will Smith at number 7. Last year had 20 home runs, 1 stolen base, 77, 75, 248, 327, 433. You have him projected for 22 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 73, 78, and a 257 average. The average was down a little bit last season. Started the season just fine, and then June he hit just over 200, 6 home runs, and then it all kind of fell apart. The launch angle was all over, the fly ball was all over. There's a lot of volatility in Will Smith's game that's not usually there. What's your thoughts on Will Smith?
Yeah, I like Will Smith as well. I think he's probably I think he's probably a decent discount this year because he's coming off of a little bit of an iffy year. I mean, his last year was pretty terrible. But I think he's young enough where he can bounce back. I don't draft a catcher anywhere near as high as Will Smith is going in most leagues. So it depends on where he's getting drafted at, but if he were there, I would happily take Will Smith. I would draft him, hoping for a bounce back. The good thing with Will Smith, unlike, and this is more like me making a narrative that may or may not exist, but Will Smith, if he gets like Ohtani is the DH on more than not all days over in Los Angeles, but if like Will Smith needs rest after like an Ohtani start, and Ohtani's not in the lineup for whatever reason, I could see Will Smith taking some DH at bats, like potentially. Like last year, none of those DH at bats were there because Ohtani was playing every single day. But if Ohtani pitches and then needs like a day off because he just, he pitched, he threw a 7 inning game and 100 pitches, and he just needs a break the day after that, I could see Will Smith potentially getting a DH start or two. Now, there's also guys, there's like Conforto, there's Edman. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts in the Dodgers lineup, and I don't necessarily know if the DH at bats are going to be there for Will Smith, but I could see maybe a few more this year than there were last year. With that said, I think he's due for a bounce back. I like I like the profile. He's you mentioned a lot of the stuff I was going to point to, like the launch angles and the fly balls and everything. His fly balls, his hard hit was down a little bit, but I think he can bounce back. I like him. I don't mind him, but he's also, he's like essentially William Contreras minus, 4 to 6 steals and maybe 25 points on batting average. So like not a huge difference for the price difference on ADP. Like, maybe 5 to 10 runs, 5 to 10 RBIs difference, but not really that dramatically considering, Will Smith is going on average like 70 picks after William Contreras. But yeah, I like Will Smith. I don't envision me drafting him because of the price he is in drafts, but I don't mind him.
Yeah, I don't either. If he happens to be the guy that falls through and gets down into the 130 to 180 range, where I think you and I kind of look at our first catcher, I would so happily snatch him up at that point.
In a two catcher league. Yeah, yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, in a two catcher league, if Will Smith falls a little bit, yeah, no, for sure. I would happily grab him.
Yeah, one of the guys that may go before him because he had a nice breakout season last year is Shea Langoliers as we start the third tier. Last year he had 29 home runs.
It's a second tier.
This is the third tier. It's okay. Doesn't matter. We're moving on. It's a new tier. Okay. Number 8, Shea Langoliers, 29 home runs, 4 stolen bases, 58, 80, 224, 288, 450. You have him projected for 27 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 59, 71, and 236. 34th in barrels, 41st in average exit velocity, and 79th in hard hit rate. Do you buy into the Shea Langoliers breakout?
Yeah, I mean, enough that I would draft. Like this is the first point. So this is a new tier, and this is the tier where I'm drafting catchers now. Assuming price. Now, like we've gone over already in the past. 150 overall in a 2 catcher league is the first catcher. In a 1 catcher league, 200 overall. So it depends on where they are, going forward. But at this point, I'm absolutely, targeting these guys. And I'm assuming they're going to be there at a decent enough price. Like that's like, it's hard, it's hard sometimes to look at like, my rankings and I'm going off of ADP for catchers specifically. And I'm saying, okay, here's a good place to draft a guy, but ADP changes. So it's like, it's not set in stone, but the ranks are what they are. And at this point, I would happily draft a catcher, and Shea Langoliers would be the first guy who I would go for if I was able to draft whoever I wanted at like 150 and the top 7 catchers are all off the board. So Shea Langoliers is like the number 1 target for me. I think he's going into a new park, which is, fantastic. I'm happy for all I'm happy for all the Athletics that are going to Sacramento. The dimensions are relatively the same, except there's no foul territory, and foul territory in Oakland was so huge it really hurt guys Babbitt. So you figure Shea Langoliers, he's not a fast guy, but if he gains like 20 points in Babbitt and he's able to hit like, 235 with, he hit 29 homers last year, say 27 homers and 235 is essentially Cal Raleigh, depending on runs and RBIs, right? So I mean, I'm in on Shea Langoliers. I like him. I don't think there's not a ton there outside of what I'm saying. Like it's not like I don't think he's gonna fall into like a 40 homer season and like 270 average, or like suddenly speed is gonna appear out of nowhere. Like there's not like we're still talking about a catcher at the end of the day, but he's a solid first catcher in a 2-catcher league, or your only catcher in a 1-catcher league if the price is right. So I like Shea Langoliers a lot.
Yeah, I do too. I think there's even upside for the average, the 252 BABIP, which is kind of in line with his career, but he's only played, like 2 seasons, 2 in a little bit. So I think there's some room to go up. He had a couple of really tough months last season that if he just cleans them up and doesn't hit sub 200 in them, the average doesn't look quite as bad. So yeah, I really like Shea Langoliers. And yes, that is Gray Albright. If the top 7 are gone, he will take his 8th guy. Just brilliant work, Gray. Moving on to number 9.
That's why you're tuning in for a 2-hour podcast about catchers. for little brain nuggets like that.
Oh yes, very good one. Next up, number 9, Tyler Stevenson, who I think I also like more than Wilson Contreras. And last year he hit 19 home runs, 1 stolen base, 69, 66, 258, 338, 444. You have him projected for 17 home runs, 1 stolen base, 68, 73, and a 251 average. K rate dropped a little bit. Swing and strike rate dropped a little bit. Walk rate was 9.3, which is pretty much in line with what he's done. Do you like Tyler Stevenson?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I was actually sorry. I was looking at the because okay, so on Razzball we have Steamer's projections, and also then Rudy takes those projections and he makes rankings out of them. So we have essentially we have Steamer ranks and we have catcher ranks from that. So anyway, long story short, I was just when you were saying that, I was looking at the catcher ranks for Steamer to see where they had Tyler Stevenson, and they have him at as the 8th catcher. So, same depth basically. They have Wilson Contreras as the 3rd catcher for what it's worth.
Oh boy,
Steamer ranks. I thought that would get a reaction out of you.
Let's put that on the non-existent list of stuff we'll ask Rudy about that we won't ask Rudy about.
Yeah, seriously. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong thing. At 5th, it's a 5th catcher off the board is Wilson Contreras. So we can still ask Rudy when we don't ask him. Okay. Okay. So anyway, back to Tyler Stevenson. So I have a quick anecdote about Tyler Stevenson that I think I've said before, but I'll say it again. And this will probably be the last time I ever mention it because it's already going to become a dated reference. But anyway, so last spring training, I was in Florida and I was talking to a Cincinnati Reds beat writer. And you would think if anyone knew the Reds as well, it would be a beat writer, right? Like no one knows the Reds, more. So anyway, I showed him my drafted team for labor, I believe. Yeah, I think I showed him my team from labor that I was drafting in Florida, and he saw that I drafted Tyler Stevenson, and he was like, I think the 13 homers that he hit in 2023, where that was the year he was coming off of, he was like, I don't think we're going to get more power from Tyler Stevenson than that. So I think he's probably, if you're expecting more, I wouldn't, essentially was what the writer told me. And then, Tyler Stevenson went on to hit 19 homers, 6 more homers. So, obviously I know more than everyone. No, that wasn't the moral of that story. The moral of the story is like, no one really knows anything. So, take it with a grain of salt when people are like, Tyler Stevenson, is, he's a 13 homer hitter. And then like the best of the best, or at least the people who would know the best, think he's a 13 homer hitter, and then he hits 19 homers. So, with that said, like I ranked Tyler Stevenson, there's a point to the story. So I ranked Tyler Stevenson where I did and not higher because maybe it's in the back of my brain what that Reds writer told me, but it's like, is he now we're at a point where this is the third season now. So this is like, so he had 13 homers and he had 19 homers last year. So now is this year going to be back to 13? Is it going to be somewhere in the middle, like 15, 16? Or is he going to build on the 19 homers and now hit like, 22 or 24 homers? I don't know. I'm just saying that's sort of where my head was at with Tyler Stevenson. I don't know really like if we're to expect, him to keep building on the power. My guess is not, which is, as my projections say, I expect him to hit 17 homers. So I expect him to fall a little bit off of the 19, but I think he does make solid contact. He's in a good park. The lineup should be good. So I like Tyler Stevenson for the price. I just don't know if there's going to be any more upside from there, I guess, from the 19 homers that he hit last year. I would expect a little bit of a fallback, but it's possible he gets even better. I mean, he's still he's 28 years old going into this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some possibility, and I'm sure that beat writer has him projected for 27 home runs this year because of the jump. So,
Yeah.
That's a funny thing about beat writers is they'll just kind of jump on trends sometimes or what the fans are feeling. I can say, since I lived a decade in Cincinnati and a decade in Atlanta now, there are some good and some very questionable beat writers in both cities. So, depending on who you ask, that's either really good information or, I might bet the other side information. So, sometimes we do know better, Grace. Sometimes we do know better.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That is a fair point because, like, I saw someone, someone say how like they wanted, they thought this player. This is getting confusing because I'm not using any names because I was trying to avoid using names. But one team's beat writer was saying how they expected a player to get much better than he actually ever got because he was a good interview, which is like, yeah, that's not really how this should work.
Ooh, that's useful on the baseball field. Let me
Yeah,
pull him to the side and get those extra bonus points for the good
yeah.
interview he gave after going 0 for 4. This
Actually,
really helped him.
you can Google it if you want. I'll tell you the player name. Ike. They expected Ike Davis to be much better than he ended up being because he was a good interview. It's an easy Google because there was an article written on Deadspin about it. So
About that exact thing. So yeah, you can go find out.
yeah.
Anyways, I like Tyler Stevenson. I think we both kind of like him, but yes, we'll let the beat writer hang out in the back of your head for as long as that's allowed. Let's move on to number 10, Connor Wong. You mentioned free agent in a bunch of leagues last year. You could have got him for nothing. He had 13 home runs, 8 stolen bases, 54, 52. He hit 280, 333, 425. You're projected for 12 home runs, 7 stolen bases, 50, 51, and a 272 average. The K rate dropped 10 points, Gray. The BABIP really wasn't changed. So this is really him making real changes. What are your thoughts here?
I think I like Wong more than most guys. Whoa, hello. I like Wong a lot. How do I avoid? I like Connor a lot. I'm trying to avoid being having snippets end up on TikTok of me saying I like Wong. I
That's what
like
happened
I
now.
like I like Connor Wong a lot more than most. I think he he's just a solid like guy who it seems like Alex Cora wants his bat in the lineup, like maybe more than he potentially should, but he catches, and then last year he saw time at second base. He saw time at third. Let's see. He saw time in the outfield last year. He saw time at first base. I don't know if he DH'd, but yeah, I mean they don't really have they have a ton of middle infielders. The Red Sox, it is. But if Tristan Casas has a recurring injury again, or anyway, whatever the case is, Alex Cora seemed to really like getting putting Connor Wong into the lineup. It seemed like he was trying to as much as he could. So that's good. I mean, for Connor Wong at least, because he's also like you mentioned, the Ks were cut by 10%. He hit 280. Maybe a tad high on the BABIP, but not necessarily that crazy. Like he looks like neutrally around the 270 hitter with some power, some speed. The BABIP is helped by Fenway, so good average. And if he gets enough at bats like that, not necessarily saying it's like the greatest thing in the world, but if he can get to 12 homers and 7 steals and hit 270 with good counting stats, that's pretty good for a catcher. I mean, it's good enough, really, as a first catcher. So yeah, I like him. I seem to like him more than ADP too, which is he might be the first catcher who I can say that about too. Like he seems, or maybe Tyler Stevenson, I don't know. But I think Connor Wong is the first guy where I'm actually able to draft him, even when you consider ADP in a 2-catcher league.
Yeah, I think that is an accurate statement, and I agree. I like Connor Wong. I feel like Boston really helps him out with that BABIP just because he's been able to stay in that high area in the 340s back-to-back seasons. He is the fastest catcher on sprint speed, so that doesn't hurt either, even if the contact isn't amazing. So I may not buy him as a full 280 hitter, but like you said, 270, 265, I think that's very much in the realm of possibility. And with a handful of steals or even a little bit more potentially, and 10 to 15 home runs, that there's worse things you can possibly do.
Mm-hmm. True.
Number 11, Ryan Jeffers. Last year, he had 21 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 56, 64. He hit 226, 300, 432. You're projected for 18 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 53, 58, and 242. The 238 BABIP did not help the 226 average, but the K rate went down over 7 points, and the walk rate went down a little bit too, but he was hitting, like I said, a lot better, or a lot more. What are your thoughts on Jeffers?
Well, I was just looking at his numbers when you're saying that, and his hard hit sort of jumped out at me. He had a 31.7% hard hit with 43.3% fly ball. So I'm guessing he pulls a lot of medium depth fly balls is my guess. I think he's probably he hit 276 in 2023, but that was with an insane BABIP, a BABIP that I just don't think he's capable of. So yeah, he's probably a 240 hitter ish, neutral luck, with 16 to 19 homer type, maybe 16 to 17, say 17 to 22 homer power. So I mean, it's fine. I did in the rankings, I do talk about how he didn't hit anywhere in the lineup for more than 18 games, which is so crazy. It's really kind of nuts that he hit everywhere in the lineup, like roughly 10 games to 18 games. It's just nuts because Rocco Baldelli just refuses to hit anywhere Jeffers played in 122 games and didn't hit anywhere more than 18 times. Like that's nuts. Anywhere more in the lineup than 18 times, 18 games. So I mean, that's just crazy. It doesn't. I mean, there's no player that should be moved around that much in a lineup. What's funny is he hit ninth for only 2 games. That was the lowest by far, and that's where Roster Resource has him penciled in as the 9th hitter. Which is, I mean, Jason over at Roster Resource does a good job with it. I'll give him props. He does a great job with the depth charts over there, but at Fangraphs. But it is kind of funny that he's penciled in as a 9 hitter, and that's like the one place he did not hit.
He doesn't hit.
He hit mostly as a 3-hole hitter. Ryan Jeffers, that is. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, moving along.
It was a really weird year as the Twins went. It wasn't a bad year. It's just really, really weird when you kind of break it down. So yeah, Ryan Jeffers, he's fine. We'll see what happens. Moving on, number 12, Francisco Alvarez, 100 games last year, 11 home runs, 1 stolen base, 39, 47, 237, 307, 403. You have him down for 24 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 57, 66, and a 219 average. The contact numbers were a little bit down, but he made a little bit more contact. So kind of a balance there. And he had a really strong finish to the season. Do you think that he can carry it over?
I was actually, when you were speaking, I was looking up to see some of his player news from last year to see if he was hurt a lot, and I got some results for back spasms. So maybe that was what was going on, because if you look at his numbers, and back spasms are not necessarily the greatest thing for a catcher, and that's not, and they tend to recur, so it's not great in general. But hopefully those problems are in the past for him. But why I say that, because like if you look at his numbers, it kind of looks like he was injured last year and playing through it, because like his numbers are terrible. They were really bad. Like he was like, I don't know, he was only 22 years old. So I'm assuming I'm kind of just throwing his numbers out and saying like, hey, draft him based on potential upside, and hopefully you get something. But if he is as bad as he was last year, he's awful. He's terrible. He's kind of unusable for fantasy if he's as bad as he was last year. But I'm going on the assumption that he was playing through injuries or something, because like everything was just so bad. Like his I was talking about hard hit percentage previously with Ryan Jeffers. I mean, talk about a hard hit percentage that just went into the dumper. Francisco Alvarez's went from 35.5%, which isn't fantastic, by the way, but it went down to 30.8%, which is just like that's, basically like you're talking about like, Bryce Terang type hard hit percentage. I mean, it's just like really bad. So yeah. And on top of all that, he suddenly started, Francisco Alvarez, that is, he hit 52.2% ground balls, which is just like, so I'm just assuming it was just a bad year that he was like playing through injury, but I don't have a ton to support that theory. I'm just saying, like, draft him based on upside, and hopefully he's able to find that pedigree that he had in 2023 when he hit 25 homers in only 123 games. Like, I think he's young enough where I'm willing to take that chance. And plus, it's a catcher. Like, it's not like, I'm hoping a first baseman bounces back. Like, it's a catcher. Worst comes to worst, he doesn't bounce back, and I have to pick up someone off of waivers or just, or sort of punt that position. But I'm fine with taking a flyer on a catcher, and Francisco Alvarez feels like he has the most upside. So I say take the flyer on the upside, but if his stats from last year are any indication of this year, he's not going to be good, but hopefully it's not an indication.
So here's some numbers to back up what you were saying, Ray, that in the middle of the season, and what the injury that I noted was the thumb. He had a thumb injury in June. And the beginning of June, he was fine, but I think it started to bother him because in July, he was never, a great K guy, but he was like a 23% to 15% K guy every other month. July and August, he's all of a sudden a 30% K rate guy. In addition to that, his home run to fly ball sits, comfortably in like the 15 to 20% range. In September, it was actually 29%. So there's even room to go up. In July and August, it was like 7%. So there was something going on July, August.
Yeah.
I would generally blame it on a thumb. That is a very power sapping injury. And he was also dealing with a little bit of a shoulder in that time as well. So
right.
Okay, I actually think good. This is a pretty easy one.
Yeah. So he's a good target for a bounce back. That's fair. I like it.
Yeah. I really like Francisco Alvarez to bounce back this year. And he's going in that 150 range in a 2-catcher league to where you and I could actually own him in some leagues.
Okay. I'm with it.
Next tier, number 13, JT Realmuto. Last year, he had 99 games, 14 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 50, 47, 266, 322, and a 429. You have him projected for 12 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 57, 54. He was pretty much in line with what you expect power, average-wise, if he had played the games. Not so much on the stolen bases, even though the sprint speed wasn't drastically different. It was a little bit down, but still in the same range. A lot of the contact numbers look similar to what he was doing in 21 and 22. What are your thoughts on JT Realmuto?
His numbers look like a like Wong without the upside. So like an impotent Wong, basically. That's what it looks like to me. I think he's also on that, the catcher, the aging curve on the catcher is not always necessarily the best. So like if he's continuing to age out of being, a everyday guy and, injuries start to mount and, as a 34-year-old in March, he turns 34 as a 34-year-old, expecting him to bounce back in any of the categories where he fell off last year. I wouldn't expect it. I think he is what he is at best. So it's like the polar opposite of like Francisco Alvarez or Connor Wong, where like JT Realmuto is what he is at best, which is like, 12 homers, 6 steals, 255 average, and, maybe 400 plus at bats and the runs and RBIs that come with that. So, roughly 55 runs and RBIs. It's fine for a 2-catcher league. Like we're in this is a new tier. And at this point, so this is the 13th catcher off the board, according to my rankings. So at this point, this is officially, so I'm looking at like a 12-catcher league is a single catcher league in my mind. And a 15-catcher league is a 2-catcher league, or 15 team or deeper is a 2-catcher league. I don't know why. I don't know why that became a thing. For whatever reason, the deeper the league, the more catchers people want to draft. Whereas like the shallower the league, the less catchers. It doesn't really make any sense, but that's how it is usually. So in a 15-team 2-catcher league, JT Realmuto is the first second catcher to draft. Is he great? No. Am I expecting, anything wonderful? No. I'm not expecting anything from him. I just want him to be on the field for like 100 to 110 games and, get the stats that I haven't projected for, and I'd be fine with it. I don't think there's any upside here. If anything, there might be some downside. But, he's has a track record long enough where I'm fine drafting him as my first second catcher.
Yeah, I think I'm a little higher on Real Muto than you are. I mean, I think he was pretty much in line from an average and a power perspective of what he's
Yeah,
done, which
oh,
is
I should point out, I'm much lower on him than ADP. ADP has
yes, you are
him.
much lower.
Yeah, ADP has him much higher.
You have him projected for basically the same at bats as he had last year, so you're either projecting injury or playing time split. Whereas I don't really see that. That may be our biggest difference here is not necessarily what you have projected for. Just I have him projected for more at bats because I don't. Last year he was injured. He had a couple different things go on. He had a knee injury. He kind of started the season with like some kind of neck, upper back thing. Now certainly those could flare up again, and he could miss some time. But until they're chronic issues or we see it in a bunch of seasons, I'm not necessarily going to write him down for he can only play 100 games.
Right. Yeah. For what it's worth, and I don't know if it's worth anything. It's the JT Real Muto is the 12th catcher according to the Steamer ranks, and he is about 210 overall on the Steamer ranks. So that's about 60 picks after the ADP has him. ADP has him at, well, actually 90 picks after. ADP has him at 127. So yeah, so I'm closer to Steamer on Real Muto for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, you're probably close to Steamer. I'm probably closer to ADP.
Yeah.
We'll see at the end who's
I
right.
don't want Real Muto in any league. But if he's there as my second catcher, sure. Okay. Anyway, moving on.
Moving on. I don't think it's going to be there.
Nope.
Number 14, Luis Campusano. Last year in 91 games, had 8 home runs, 37-40, hit 227, 281, 361. You have him projected for 15 home runs, 49, 54, and 241 average. You mentioned in your write-up that this is a projection trust fall. What's your thoughts on Campusano?
So when I first released my catcher rankings on Patreon, I didn't even have him ranked at all. And I mean I go through every team. I go through the depth chart of every team and I make sure every starter's in there. For whatever reason, I didn't think Campusano was going to be the starter for the Padres by the time we got to January. I figured they would get like Danny Jansen, the Padres, that is. I figured they would get Danny Jansen or someone. I thought they would sign someone because they've never like put any faith in him as the starter. But it's January 24th as we recorded this. It looks like he's the starter. I don't see anyone else really coming around to take his job. So then I saw where Steamer had him ranked and projected, and Steamer has him at had him way high at he had him at Steamer Rudy's rankings at least has Campusano at 20th catcher. So I guess I have him higher than that, but once I started putting projections into him and started once I started putting at bats, giving him at bats, like at 250 at bats, he hit 8 homers last year. So once I gave him 400 plus at bats, I was like, well, I mean, how, like, he's not gonna only get like a homer or 2 more with an extra 200 at bats. So I had to move him up based on projections. So I started giving him at bats, and once I started giving him at bats, his numbers didn't look that bad. I see the K percentage is like, last year is 13.7%. If he's at a 15% K rate, he looks like, neutral luck. He looks pretty good for batting average, like not that bad. Like I mentioned the power already. So, if he's say 50 runs, 50 RBIs, 15 homers, which feels like relatively conservative, and a 240 average. I mean, this is kind of where he is with the projections with my rankings, and also I think he has upside from that. So yeah, I mean, I'm in. I didn't think I would be in. Like I was nowhere. Not only did I not think I was be in, I didn't even rank him at first, but once I start digging in, and it seems like the Padres are giving him the everyday job, I'm in.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm necessarily in. Your projection isn't too far off of what I would think. You might be a little bit higher, but I've seen Steamer and they have him projected for 261, and I I just don't see. I know he had bad BABIP luck last year, but 261 sounds kind of crazy to me. I know he had 319 in like 49 games, but that's 49 games. He doesn't really strike out, so there's always a chance of BABIP luck, but he doesn't hit the ball hard. He's slower than a rock. Like I don't know where this magic BABIP is coming from that's going to get him to a 260 hitter. So I would say 230, 240 is the right range, 10 to 15 home runs. So I think you're closer to where I have him in projection, but I think you're still higher on him in a ranking than I would have him.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I don't think there's a ton of catchers I want anymore. And the catcher, there is like, okay, so fair enough. I only really out of all my catcher ranks, I really only kind of won 3 catchers.
And we're not getting them.
Yeah, and so it's like I don't like the next guys in my rankings. I'm like, nah. Like Logan O'Hoppe is like fine, but they brought in Travis d'Arnaud, and you really think Ron Washington isn't going to play Travis d'Arnaud way more than you expect? I mean, I don't know. And then Austin Wells, Gabriel Marino, like, well, I guess we'll get to them, but like as we go along in these rankings, it's like there's no one really that I want anymore. So who cares? So I'm like, at least Luis Campusano has some upside, I think. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Fair enough. I think I would kind of put the same caveat on the next guy, which is Logan O'Hoppe. Like at least maybe there's some upside here. I feel like what you want from Luis Campusano is what Logan O'Hoppe has already done, which is last year 20 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 64-56, and he had 244. You are projected for 16 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 52-56, 239. Again, I just feel like that's what you want from Luis Campusano, and that's a regression step for Logan O'Hoppe. So if he does happen to take a step forward, there's more, but I also understand your point about the fact that he may not get as many at bats this year with d'Arnaud signing, with the Soler signing at DH. There may just not be as many opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's all it comes down to, really. Like d'Arnaud, I believe I had Logan O'Hoppe in the top 12 catchers originally, and then when d'Arnaud signed, I bumped O'Hoppe down like 3 catchers. Like I don't dislike O'Hoppe. I just feel like like my projections say, I have him, getting 70 less at bats. So and with that comes less runs, less RBIs, less homers. He already was kind of like neutrally a 240 hitter. So it's like, 240, 15 to 18 homers. It's fine. If someone says to me, if someone hops out of a DeLorean and is like, hey, I just came from the future and I'm here to tell you, Hoppe is getting 550 at bats in 2025, then I'd be like, you know what? If you're going to bring me news from the future, bring me anything else. Can you tell me anything else other than that? And my second thought is, okay, so what's he going to do? Hit 24 homers with a 240 average? Okay, fine. I was a little bit wrong, but at the end of the day, he's fine.
Yeah, he's fine. I'm not going to bat crazily for Loda Hop. I just like him more than Luis Campusano. That's all. Moving on to number 16 is Austin Wells. Last year had 13 home runs, one stolen base, 42, 55, and hit 229. You have him projected for 15 home runs, one stolen base, 56, 61, and 239. K rate went up a little versus the minimal exposure we saw in 2023. Walk rate went up significantly from 4% to 11.4. That was nice to see. Did have a lot of games at cleanup last year. Probably not going to be the case this year, given what the Yankees have added and what they have on the roster. But what do you think about Austin Wells?
My biggest thought on Austin Wells is I have no idea who is drafting him as high as they're drafting him. I don't know. Maybe Austin Wells signed up for a bunch of leagues at the NFBC and was like, you know what? I want to push up my ADP so people talk about me. I don't know who's drafting Austin Wells in the 140s, but someone is. It's not me, that's for sure. I mean, last year. Well, you said the numbers, but last year, in basically, more or less full time at bat, he had 13 homers and 229. Like, what are people expecting? I mean, how much better do people expect him to get? Like, he's a 235 hitter with maybe 16 homers. Like, okay. It's fine. I mean, I don't know. These are, again, like I said, I would draft these guys as my second catcher. According to ADP, there's no way I'm getting Austin Wells in any leagues, which I'm totally fine with. I'm fine not drafting Austin Wells, but yeah, I mean, I would in theory if he were there at pick 300. Instead, he's going at pick 150. Anyway.
Yeah, the only thing I could say is somebody Mr. Prorated his July and August and is dreaming of that for 6 months. But that's what happens with everybody. Everybody has a couple months that are a lot better than the others. Prorating that across the full season isn't reality. So I don't know where the Austin Wells draft cost is coming because he's not going to hit cleanup. I mean, my mind can't fathom him cleaning up with the current Yankees roster. So that was a lot of the value that I thought he might bring still. Moving on to Gabriel Montero, aka Inigo Montoya, aka Gabriel Moreno is his real name.
I have since fixed that typo, but I always make that mistake. I can close my eyes and spell Mark Rezlinski, but I don't think I've ever spelled Gabriel Moreno's name correctly the first time. For some reason, I always put Montero like he's the Jeep.
Well, last year at 97 games, Montero had 5 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 39, 45, and hit 266. You have him down for 7 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 61, 64, and 286. K rate went down, walk rate went up. What do you like about Inigo Montoya? I mean, Gabriel Moreno.
He's going at 180 overall in ADP, and he just hit 5 homers and stole 3 bags. That was like a bad week for Shohei Ohtani. I get he's not going 1 overall, so he's not Ohtani, but that he's going at 180 overall. Like, have people lost their minds with catchers? Like, catchers really. They confuse how to draft a catcher. It really confuses people. I don't understand it, honestly. I mean, you look at going around Gabriel Moreno's area is Seth Lugo, who was a top 5 starter last year. Like, okay. I mean, that's a little bit more valuable than a 5-homer, 3-steal guy. Also going around Marino's spot this year is Tyler O'Neill, who has 35-homer upside, but okay. I mean, this is really like Lane Thomas is going around the same spot.
Taylor Ward, who puts up the
Taylor Ward, Tanner Scott, who's the Dodgers closer. I mean, what are people doing, man? Like, how is anyone looking at Gabriel Marino on their draft sheet and being like, 5 homers, 3 steals? That sounds pretty good at 180 overall. Oh man, like honestly, I don't think people understand how to draft a catcher. I'm not sure they do. Okay, anyway, I would draft Marino if he was available around 320 overall when I have him ranked. But since he's going around 180, I'm not drafting Marino. I think he's perfectly acceptable for batting average. He has basically nothing else.
Yeah, I actually don't mind that from a catcher. Just batting average.
I don't either at 300 overall.
But yeah, I would say after 200 for me because I like him a little bit more than you. But yeah, it's not worth reaching for. Like you said, Taylor Ward going to that area. You know what his projection looks like? The number 1 catcher. Ivan Herrera at 18. 72 games. He had 5 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 37-27, hit 301. Projected for 10 home runs, 10 stolen bases, 56-49, and a 282 average. The Cardinals carrying 3 catchers and not using 1 a catcher is a pretty bold choice. Hey, Ivan should be the number 1 catcher since they're not going to play said catcher at catcher. Well, I mean, those numbers don't sound bad, Gray, but he's definitely splitting time with at least 1, if not 2 people.
Yeah, no, again, if this, hypothetical person who jumped out of the DeLorean and told me Ivan Herrera was about to get 500 at bats, I'd be like, oh, okay. So he's like a top 3 catcher.
Yeah, he's really good there.
Yeah. If he gets 500 at bats, he's going to be a top 3 catcher. So I like the flyer a lot. It's actually, I mean, he hit 5 homers and stole 5 bags and hit 301 last year in 72 games. I mean, he blows away Gabriel Marino if he comes anywhere close to his at bats. So I guess, I don't know. I mean, I'm over the whole Gabriel Marino thing. But Ivan Herrera is fine, but like you mentioned the issue, like, can we? How many at bats do we know he's going to get? I don't know. I mean, I projected him for 389 at bats. I think that might be optimistic. I see, Steamer's got him for like 300 at bats. I think our Steamer projections, that is, they have him for, they have him at 350. So that's not bad. 350, and then so that means he is the 13th catcher according to their ranks. They're being us, but Rudy being 13th catcher according to Rudy. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't hate Herrera, but it's just how many at bats is he really going to get is the issue. So I don't know. We'll see. But I like the flyer if he's there for a quote unquote flyer. Yeah, I would draft him as my second catcher for sure. I just don't know if he's going to be there, and chances are he's not going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather draft Herrera in the at post 200 than Austin Wells in the pre 200, but it just depends on the playing time with Herrera. Like, you're gonna have to be willing to swap those out if it's a daily league, or just eat some days without stats if it's a weekly.
Mm-hmm.
Number 19, Keibert Ruiz. Last year he went 13 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 46, 57, hit 229. You projected for 14 home runs, 4 stolen bases, 47, 53, and 262. His production slipped from the previous year. Lost 5 home runs, batting average dropped 40 points. BABIP also dropped 30 points, so there may be a little bit of correlation there. But what are your thoughts on Keibert Ruiz?
My big takeaway for him is I think he is he's still their catcher of the future / of right now. So I see him getting like everyday at bats where, like, we said with Herrera, how many at bats is he really going to get? There's some question marks like, Hop, I mentioned, like Desarnaud, like there's some question marks around some of the guys in this tier who I'm saying are a second catcher. Keibert Ruiz he's got the positive of like, you feel pretty confident he's going to be their go-to catcher. It's just, what kind of stats are you going to get? On the other positive is he never strikes out, so he could have a decent average-ish, decent-ish.
Yeah, I mean, it could just, he makes a lot of contact. He doesn't strike out. He doesn't walk either, but he's a guy who likes to swing the bat. Just takes one good bat up year, and he could come out with a nice average instead of 229, but he's already put up the 229, so we know that's in the realm of possibility as well. Moving on, number 20, Sean Murphy, 72 games last year, 10 home runs. He had 19 runs, 25 RBIs, hit 193. You have him projected for 17 home runs, 49 runs, 57 RBI, 244. I mean, he missed the start of the season with an oblique issue. Huge numbers drop across the board. Then when he came back and was supposedly healthy, he and Darno split time, pretty much 50-50. Sean Murphy was somebody at one point who was like the number one catcher for most of a season. Can he get back there, or is that just hoping on Sean Murphy?
No, I think that's possible. I think, if his price is around where I have him ranked, which it's not necessarily, but if it is, if you're in a league where Sean Murphy is draftable after 200 overall, and you're like looking for a possible upside gamble, I don't mind Sean Murphy. You're just rolling the dice that he's going to bounce back and he's healthy, really. And he's only, what is he, 29? He just turned 30. So he turned 30 in October, but 30 isn't that old for a catcher. He could bounce back. I don't mind the flyer, but you're totally just assuming last year was just a lost year and it has nothing to do with like this year. You're just going on faith that he's going to bounce back to a previous season.
Yeah, it is pretty much just betting that he's going to bounce back. But, he's coming off back-to-back 250. He had 18 in home runs and 21 home runs. So if he can bounce back, you're getting essentially what you were asking of, like, I don't know,
number one,
Adley Rutschman.
Yeah, Adley Rutschman, yeah. Yeah, so, you're basically getting a top 5 catcher if Sean Murphy bounces back. It's a fairly large if, but it's there. I mean, that possibility exists.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing in a 2-catcher deep roster league, you grab a couple of these guys that back in, and if Sean Murphy's one, you'll know pretty early if Sean Murphy's kind of back or if he's like he was last year and more Forrest Gump as a kid. Let's move on to 21, Joey Bart. 80 games. He had 13 home runs, 38 runs, 45 stolen bases, 265. You have projected for 14 home runs, 46.51, and a 254 average. The K rate went up a little bit. Walk rate went up from 3.2 to 7.8, so more than doubled. The batted ball went up across the board. So it only took like 5 years, but Joey Bart is starting to kind of come into the shape that they thought he might be at some point.
Yeah, well, not they as in the Pirates though. the Giants drafted. I mean, it just shows you though how like even catchers are so totally fickle when for real baseball. Like the Giants drafted Joey Bart, expecting him to be good. got nothing out of him, let him go for nothing, and the Pirates grabbed him. And the Pirates, who developed and invested like first round pick and developed Andy Rodriguez and Henry Davis, and they put so many resources into those guys and got nothing out of them and got Joey Bart for free. Catchers are really hard to figure. I don't think people really understand how difficult it is to be a catcher in the major leagues. And Adlai Rutschman is a good example of that for what he did last year. Like, just because the guy is supposed to be like, the best catcher ever, there's a chance he's not going to be that good. It's just possible. Anyway, Joey Bart was good. I mean, he was, solid for. I'm fine getting Joey Bart as like a second catcher. If he, I don't expect him to grow further into like, power, but if he just repeats last year, that's totally a usable season. I think, if anything, maybe the average comes down a little bit. Power, I don't really like. He hit 13 homers in 80 games, but I don't really see a ton of power, for him to grow into more, but I guess it's possible. I mean, I don't know. I like the flyer though. If he's available for a second catcher, I'm all about it. I'm totally fine drafting Joey Bart. He's getting closer to where I start drafting a second catcher. So he's not totally out of the realm of possibilities for me. He's going right now at around 230 overall. He's going around 250 overall. And as low as 350. So, yeah, I mean, there might be leagues where Joey Bart's available. I would be fine drafting him.
Yeah, I think there's probably Joey Bart leagues where you can grab him fairly late, just people who just don't believe in him or kind of laugh it off in a little bit there. And Henry Davis certainly lost some prospect shine, but I'm not completely done with him either. We'll probably see him at some point this year, and one of the reasons Joey Bart probably isn't projected for 130 games behind the plate as well as I would imagine at some point they want to see Henry Davis up, whether he's good or not, potentially.
Yeah.
Moving on to, I think the last tier we're going to talk about here, Jonah Heim at 22. You have him down for 13 home runs. Last year he had 13 home runs, one stolen base, 45, 59, and hit 220. You have him down for 15 home runs, one stolen base, 41, 51, and 228. Power and average both regressed. He did make a little bit more contact, but it wasn't as good a quality of contact. Unfortunately, he might have Ozzie Albies condition as a switch hitter where he just cannot actually hit as a lefty.
Yeah, no, it's possible. He also he's a good example of like how fickle catcher rankings are, because Jonah Heim, I don't remember, necessarily exactly where he was last year, but he was getting drafted way higher last year. People were expecting, much better things from him. He was coming off of a 18 homer, 258 season. And now he's just totally forgotten as, a 29-year-old he'll turn 30 in June. But, I don't know. I mean, he could have a couple hot months and be a 20 homer hitter again. Like I'm not counting out Jonah Heim. I think he's ranked where I would draft him, and he's being drafted roughly around where I have him ranked. So I could see having Jonah Heim in a bunch of leagues and, expecting a bounce back. But even if he doesn't bounce back and he just gives me what he did last year, which while wasn't amazing, it's a second this is all second catchers, obviously. And so he's a second catcher. He's fine if he does only, what he did last year. And if he does better, great.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let's move on to 23. Bo Naylor. Last year, he had 13 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 39, hit 201. You have him projected for 15 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 47, 48, and a 211 average. K rate went up a little bit. Walk rate went down a little bit. In 2023, he had 11 home runs in 67 games. Last year, only 13 home runs in 123 games. So we did not really see the build on him either. This is kind of the tier of disappointment, maybe a little bit. There's still some hope for Bo Naylor. Maybe that power can return, but we didn't see it last year.
No, we did not. He's probably worst case scenario is probably around where you're getting Bo Naylor, which isn't bad. I mean, if you're able to draft a guy at worst case scenario, that's not a bad flyer for a catcher. I don't mind Bo Naylor at all as like a second catcher. If I'm able to get him, I'd be more than happy. Even if he does repeat what he did last year, it's like, okay, so it's not great, but whatever. It's a second catcher. And he still has this vague sense of upside. Like at one point, people did really like his power and speed and hit tool, and he's only 24. So, yeah, I mean, he's actually probably be 25 by the time people listen to this because he's a February baby. Maybe he just need to get out of the shadow of his big brother, Josh. Maybe that's all. Maybe it's now when his parents come to games and they cheer on Bo, he knows it's all for him. I don't know, but he's got upside, and I'm willing to take the downside hit for a second catcher.
Yeah, second catcher, you're kind of hoping for something, and if it doesn't happen, you just jump to the next one and figure it out at that point. Let's keep moving here. At number 24 is Patrick Bailey. Last year, he had 8 home runs, 4 stolen bases, 46, and hit 234. You have him down for 11 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 52, 47, and a 231 average. He dropped the K rate 6 points, walk rate improved a few points. Batted ball improved, hard hit went, and average exit velocity went up a little bit. Patrick Bailey could be pretty serviceable in this area.
Yeah, no, definitely. He also had 400 at bats last year and had 8 homers and 4 steals. So he may not be serviceable either. He could potentially be terrible, but it's a second catcher. So, I mean, you're taking a little bit of a flyer here, but that's fine. I don't mind the flyer. I mean, he was at one point considered, a good hit tool guy. I mean, at one point, people assumed he was going to hit like 270. He ended up hitting 230 last year, so I mean, who knows? But yeah, I think the flyer is fine. I don't mind it. I think at worst you're getting last year, which was awful, but it's a second catcher, so you're whatever on that. And the upside is good enough where you might luck into an upside of like a top 12 catcher or something. So yeah, I don't mind it. It's good too that like he has zero competition. He's the catcher for day one, as many games as he can catch, which I mean might not be more than 120 games, but still, I mean every day he's probably the catcher. Unless he's resting because he's caught too many days in a row. Otherwise, he's their guy. I mean, after they sent Joey Bart and got nothing. I think they're definitely gonna give Patrick Bailey a chance.
Yeah, and I will say, the one kind of thing for maybe a little bit of upside on Bailey is, he kind of had a oblique issue somewhere around the All-Star break. He hit 170 after the All-Star break with only 1 home run. He hit 283 with 7 home runs before the All-Star break. So there's a potential that the oblique issue kind of hurt his offensive production a little bit. There's a small amount of upside still there, potentially, especially this late. Yeah, I'm trying to make this exciting, Gray. Best I can.
Okay, yeah.
We're at 25 among catchers.
Honestly, it's not working.
I tried. I really tried. Jacob Stallings, last year had 9 home runs, 31, 36, hit 263. You him down for 9 home runs. .238 average, 41, 43 on the counting numbers. Career high in home runs at 34 years old in only 82 games. And wouldn't you know it, he moved to Colorado that year. So, I mean, he's fine.
Yeah. No, I honestly feel like I could be the high man on Jacob Stallings, and I don't blame others for not drafting him. I don't. But on the other hand, if he's in Coors have you ever met Bud Black? I mean, he's gonna play Jacob Stallings for like 500 at bats. I mean, you're gonna have he's gonna be like the DH by July. you know Jacob Stallings is gonna get at bats, and Jacob Stallings had, like you said, had 9 homers last year and 243 at bats in Colorado. Like, as a Rocky,
Right.
some of those games were away, but even so, like Jacob Stallings gets 450 at bats on the Rockies. I mean, I think he could be serviceable as a second catcher. I mean, that seems pretty good. I mean, who knows? I don't know. Like, they don't have anyone like Hunter Goodman is like their backup catcher, and they're not going to start him for any real serious amount of time. I mean, as crazy stupid as Bud Black is, he's not that crazy stupid. So, I mean, Hunter Goodman is going to be floating from first base to DH, maybe catch a game or two, but Jacob Stallings is their catcher, whether people like it or not. I mean, that's it. He is.
Yeah, I mean, you just do a little Colorado Mr. Prorater with them. All of a sudden, you got 15 250, and that sounds a lot like your projection for Luis Camposano or JT Realmuto, who are 10 spots higher. Logan O'Hoppe, who is going like way higher in some drafts. So no, I don't hate the Jacob Stallings call as we're here at the bottom of the what would be your catcher 2 rankings. I know, there's different order and people go wherever, but no, I don't mind that at all. And especially since their backup catcher is Hunter Goodman, who's not really a catcher anymore.
Yeah. And Jacob Stallings' ADP is at 600 overall. So he's available in every league. Like, I could see a scenario where I hold my nose and draft Jacob Stallings in the last round of every 2-catcher league, just like whatever. I mean, and that's what a second catcher should be. It should be like your last round pick where you're just like, he has a job. Who cares?
Yeah, I mean, you and I might have to fight for him as like a $2 catcher in AL only, so or NL only. Sorry, so we'll have to figure that one out. We've got 25 here, Gray. We've covered at least rankings wise up to 2 catcher 2s in a 12-team league. Do you have a couple of guys left here as we're approaching the 2-hour mark that you want to just if you're still looking, if you're in a 15-team league, so that goes 30 deep potentially? Who are some other guys you're looking at?
Okay, so Danny Jansen I have ranked below this, and Danny Jansen is kind of, to me, like he's been a bit of like the guy who everyone expects better things from, and nothing ever comes of him. But I mean, if he does have an everyday job, and whatever that means for Kevin Cash and the Rays, it will probably mean like maybe 350 at bats ish. But if he has that and they're playing in Steinbrenner Field, their home games, that is, the Rays, Danny Jansen could be, I don't know. I mean, crazier things have happened than a guy like Danny Jansen having like a career year in a minor league park, as like the Rays, and the Rays just play him, just hit him in the middle of the lineup because they don't really have a middle of the lineup guy. So I don't know. I mean, I don't love Danny Jansen to the point of like I didn't rank him higher, but I like him enough in like a 2-catcher league. if you're really punted and you're in like the last round and you're like, Danny Jansen, okay, has anyone drafted him? No, okay, I'll take him. It's not the worst flyer at the very end in like the last round of your draft. So there's a guy for you. How about you? You got anyone?
I just mentioned Hunter Goodman and how he's not really a catcher and he shouldn't really be used in that manner. But he's going to get some time there. He's going to get some time in the outfield. I don't actually think he's good, but he's going to get some playing time and he's in Coors. So that's always at least, somewhat interesting. David Fry, the first couple months of 2024, he looked like he was going to be the number one catcher. Now the walk rate fell off completely. He got pull happy and launch happy and it all fell to crap. But if he remembers how to hit the ball like he hit it the first couple months where he was just
and he also had elbow surgery, so you have to keep that in mind.
Yes, but this late, if you're just waiting on catcher and maybe got an IL thought to stick him for a little while, not the worst thing. Kyle Higashioka, I mean, if Jonah Heim doesn't improve, there's a possibility he becomes, if not catcher one, like a 50-50 split there. And Travis d'Arnaud for kind of the same reason. Like we've seen him come in, take a 50-50 split, even if he doesn't deserve it. And 15 home runs, 240. That's even in a 50-50 split is pretty solid. Especially if it's a weekly or daily league, you can go out and find again somebody else because we're talking like that's Austin Wells numbers, and Austin Wells is going as a top 10 catcher in a lot of leagues. So what's the big difference here?
Nope.
I'm with it. That's what I got for you.
I didn't honestly. I wasn't sure if we could get to over 2 hours for a catcher podcast, but we've surprised even me with this.
I could tell by how long the first two people take. If it takes us 30 minutes to get through the first two names, we're gonna be on a 2-hour track. That's always gonna be. That's how it goes, Gray. Those first two we really eat up time with those guys, even though we probably shouldn't. They're probably the most well-known ones, but hey, it is what it is. That's what people want to know about too.
The good news is our next podcast is First Baseman, and Vlad Jr. and Bryce Harper already went over them in the top 20. So it's gonna be the shortest podcast ever.
So we'll spend half an hour on whoever your third first baseman is. That's going to be great. No, that'll be fun. I'm pretty sure it's Freddie Freeman if I remember the ranks right, but
nope.
We will cover that.
Josh Naylor. Okay. No spoilers, even though you can see all this on Razzball.com.
Yeah, it's already out there. It's going to be out there by the time this gets published, so they'll be able to see it. But yes, if you want to follow us, I'm at RazBeaton. Gray is, of course, the owner of at Razzball on Twitter, youtube.com/Raz.
I think it's Matt Olson. I forgot my own rankings. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. Sorry.
youtube.com/Razzball Fantasy. If you want to watch us rather than just listen to us. And we'll be back next week for First Baseman. As Gray mentioned, we got a couple that we've already done. Not that that's going to cut down on the time of the show. That's never helped until we get to maybe the second set of outfielders, but probably not. Just buckle in if you want positional rankings with us. Until next time, talk to you later, Gray. Have a good one.
All right, Lates.